Thus, Lucifer became the devil and his followers the demons. Those who remained neutral in the battle were cursed to be born with black skin. This is the Mormon explanation for the Negro race. The spirits that fought most valiantly against Lucifer would be born into Mormon families on planet Earth. These would be the lighter-skinned people, or white and delightsome, as the Book of Mormon describes them.
Unfiltered. Welcome back, my people. Welcome back to our channel. Let's get right into it, guys. Grab your popcorn, grab a drink. We really have to dissect this and see what kind of information we can pull from this to therefore use it to our own advantage. And I'm going to exactly tell you what I'm talking about. But before we do, click a like, click a subscribe for your girl. Join our channel. You will have a lot of fun here. Click subscribe. Click it. Let's get into the video. I just came across this content creator, and she is a ex-white supremacist, ex-radicalized MAGA girly. It is very important for us to get into the minds and to see what is it. Why did they choose this MAGA life? So that we as Democrats can really touch on those people that kind of on the fence and we can grab them. Now, how often can you come across somebody that will take you all inside their world? And I think that is what she exactly did. And I want to thank her for putting this footage out. We are going to look at how did she become radicalized? What did she believe in while she was a mega girly? What made her leave? How did she leave? What is her perspective now? Things like that we're going to watch. All right, let's go. Let's look at how she was actually indoctrinated as a child.
Here's how that played out in my religion. I was taught that Garden of Eden was in Missouri and that Jesus was then going to come back to a temple in Missouri. And my church owns the land in that area, and they've been building up their future Zion since like the 1800s. And even as like a child and a teenager growing up, I always was looking at things going on in the world. When Desert Storm happened, I started thinking pretty soon we're going to have to leave America, say goodbye to all of our non-member friends who are going to burn, and we're going to have to walk to Missouri so that we can gather in Zion with the saints. And at that point, we will no longer be part of America. We will be part of God's kingdom, the kingdom on earth. That's actually what my scriptures were all about. It's just war after war after war, and it's the righteous fighting their own nation, which is why at the Capitol riot, do you guys remember this guy? He looked like a gladiator, and I remember people talking about like this gladiator guy, but he wasn't actually dressed like a gladiator. He's a Mormon guy, and he was dressed like Moroni, this guy at the end of the Book of Mormon, and he was dressed as Captain Moroni from the Book of Mormon. That wasn't cosplay. He believed that this whole entire thing and like the insurrection, that was prophecy fulfilled and that the end times were coming. And that flag was straight from the Book of Mormon too. That was his title of liberty, where it's like for our children, for our nation, for our God, we are now fighting against our own people. The same teachings that radicalized that guy and Jody Hildebrandt, they radicalized me. Gay rights, that's because of Sodom and Gomorrah. As soon as people started to practice homosexuality in Sodom and Gomorrah, then the whole entire Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed and Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt. So I was always fighting gay marriage because I believed that as soon as that came to be, that America was just gonna burn. Also, single mothers, to me, they were just as bad as gay people. If the family starts to disintegrate, then the whole earth will be cursed. And I was ready to die for it, and I was ready to fight for it. Then I started waking up, and not because someone argued me out of it, but honestly because of books. And I think that that's why they want to defund education.
You see, guys, so she says because of books, which is why we often hear that they want to erase all history, and especially all history from Black people. They want to erase. Knowledge is power. Look at the whole mandate that they have written, Project 2025. Not a lot of people have read. Trump put it all out in there, but people didn't read it. Reading is fundamental. We all know this, but we all know that people hardly do this and miss out on a lot of information. Let's keep educating ourselves.
Hi, I am a Nephite boy living in the city of Zerahim. You are probably wondering what my name is. My name is also Nephi. Oh, pardon me. This is my friend. She is a good Lamanite. Her grandparents were converted to the church by Ammon the missionary.
Gabby Arrington's robbers are being very wicked, but look what Heavenly Father has done. So I scared? Isn't it pretty and white? Heavenly Father made my skin white. All righteous Lamanites now have a white skin. Isn't it wonderful? And I look so pretty.
Let me give you a little bit of context for this video because there's some doctrine that you need to understand. My church taught that anyone on the American continents with a brown skin had brown skin because they had been cursed by God. Specifically, their ancestors long, long ago had been horrible, terrible, sinful people. And so God had cursed them. He had turned them brown. And my church also taught that if those brown-skinned people would read the Book of Mormon, would get baptized in the church, go through the temple, and basically just give their lives over to Jesus and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that their skin would lighten. And I believed this 100% with all of my heart. My church also taught that Africans were black because Cain had murdered Abel. And so then Cain had been turned black and then he had been sent to Africa. And I believed that too. In the pre-existence, there were good people and bad people, just like there are on earth, and Satan lived in the pre-existence. And so there was Satan and Jesus Christ in our past life, even before we came here. And some of the people in the pre-existence were just not good enough. They were a little bit swayed by Satan. The direct revelation says that they were not valiant in their pre-earth state. And so even though they had the opportunity to come to earth and live out earth life, they were sent to African families. Those in the past life that weren't valiant, the less righteous, the less good ones, they were sent to African families. Heavenly Father's favorites, they were sent to white Mormon families in Utah.
So can you believe, guys, dark people were not valiant. They were not good enough. Sent to African people. She says they were a little bit swayed by Satan, we believe. No, they very much believe that we are descendants of Satan. And if you have been brainwashed like this from a small age, can you believe how the people are walking around on the streets today, looking at us, believing like, I want to hang out with you. I want to have some sort of a relationship with you because you're a good neighbor, but you are actually brought to Africa and you were swayed by Satan. My God, this is deeper than we think.
So part of my mentality behind this ideology too was that, like, I understood that Trump was a monster. I understood that he had been a womanizer. Like, I knew at the time, back in, when was this, 2017, 2018, something like that, I knew that he'd been running around with Epstein. I knew that he had all kinds of nefarious things in his past, but I had this very, like, God versus Satan mindset with how I looked at the world because of my religion. So I felt like there were these good men that were born to be leaders, and Satan knew that. And there's this ideology within my religious community that Satan works the hardest on those that he knows will have the greatest impact. So, like, if you're really righteous and you're a leader and you're going to change the world, Satan's going to fight against you. So I just saw poor Donald Trump as somebody who Satan was always out to get. And this worldview was very much reinforced by my religious community. My Mormon church was founded by a man who had 14-year-old girls, 39 wives. Brigham Young had like 50 something. And just within my own personal little bubble in my religious community, I had friends close to me and personal priesthood leaders, bishops, people within our church community who committed crimes against children, who then repented and went on, and I saw doing amazing things. So again, that mindset of like Jesus versus Satan in the world, and these good men are always going to be targets for Satan. So like they have to fight against all of these temptations. Of course, Satan's trying to drag them down. So I transposed those horrible things that I saw within my religious community onto Donald Trump. I projected that all onto him. I believed that he was called of God. And I don't say this on my Facebook, but like I would pray for Donald Trump every single day. Passionate, heartfelt prayers. The Book of Mormon teaches that there have been different civilizations of people that have been led to America, which is called the Promised Land in the Book of Mormon, by the hand of God himself. There's this little youth ministry song called Book of Mormon Stories, and I'm just going to sing a couple lines of it for you here. Book of Mormon stories that my teacher tells to me are about the Lamanites. These are the actual gestures that went with it. I learned this as a 3-year-old child. Are about the Lamanites in ancient history. Long ago their fathers came from far across the sea, given this land if they live righteously. That's not a white supremacy indoctrination that I was forced through as a 3-year-old child, that God had given it to my people, my ancestors, because we were more righteous. And so then on the flip side of that, I believed that anyone who came into the borders of America now illegally didn't belong here, that they were working for Satan, and that we, the righteous people, could protect our nation of God by keeping those people out. And coincidentally, most of those people had brown skin.
So you heard her. All these people that we are preaching against and talking about were brown. Coincidentally, you as a black Mormon sitting in the church hearing that they have been cursed with brown skin, how do you react to that? Tell me, because I'm really curious. What do you think we as Democrats need to do? Because this is why they love Trump so much. Let's continue.
As a religious person in that community, I always had this feeling that Heavenly Father was up there and in charge, and so I didn't have to worry about anything. And I belonged to a church where we had the charismatic leaders with Joseph Smith and prophets at the top, and then I converted to Christianity after I left the Mormon Church, and we had these strong pastors with these big personalities, and I was conditioned and accustomed to that strong leadership. What I wasn't conditioned for is cooperativeness, which felt very chaotic. I didn't want a communist type of structure where we were all egalitarian. And in fact, that egalitarianism to me felt like a sin, because that power structure was everything that my whole entire life had been modeled on. Alt-right MAGA girl, I looked at the Democrats and just thought that they were utterly chaotic. I looked at people like Bernie Sanders. I looked at people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I wanted a powerful man to lead. One of my biggest draws to the alt-right was order. There were rules, there were laws, there were guns, there were armies. And I loved that sense of order, and that order came with a strong leader. And we see Trump doing this. We see Trump playing to this. He is a leader, and that is why he won. That's why he got their votes. It's not necessarily that most Christians or most Republicans even aligned with Trump, but they're used to Mr. Big. They're used to someone large and in charge. And Donald Trump steps right in and he gives them that. Is there any hope that other people like you can transition out of this MAGA beast that's taking over the country? So I used to hate watch the Democratic convention. So imagine one night I'm sitting on my posh couch in my $1 million house with my ultra-right husband surrounded by all of our little rich children. And I'm hate watching the Democratic convention. And this tall black man takes the stage. I had no idea who this little senator was, but his speech shook me to the core. And it's funny, I sat there listening and I thought to myself, this is actually everything that I believe. I don't remember all he said, but of course, talking about social justice and racial justice and income disparity. Those were some of his main topics. And before long, I would find myself ordering his books. After he was elected, I spent money on, I think it was a Time magazine with Michelle on the cover. And I read all about her life, and she was so impressive and beautiful. And I felt like our country was in good hands just because of my low income following a divorce and leaving my whole entire community and homelessness after 24 years of being a trad wife. I am still economically compromised today, and I would not have any of the health care that I've had in my 7 surgeries the past 2 years if it wasn't for Obamacare.
So guys, let's look at how she actually left the MAGA church.
For me, one day at age 44, I woke up with my husband, Jake, and 2 of our kids, age 8 and 14. And it was Sunday morning. We were just getting ready for church. Now, I was going through some really difficult things after 24 years of domestic violence, and then discovering that my Mormon Reformed missionary had a double that I don't want to really dive into on this video. I do tons of other videos on what that looked like and how that impacted me. But I was at a place in my life where church to me was supposed to be this oasis of peace and love, and the people within my religious community were supposed to be that rock for me. And instead, church that day was so hateful. Mormon church is 3 hours long. The whole 3 hours was hateful, but the last hour was where I snapped in class. And then the teacher introduces the lesson, and the lesson is on the evils of homosexuality. And that first little 10 minutes of her lesson, she was talking about her sister-in-law who is bisexual and all the reasons why the sister-in-law was basically going to hell and what an evil person she was, and just personally attacking this total stranger that none of us knew. And all I felt was, this is so hateful. This was supposed to be my refuge, and the lesson itself, the doctrine of the church, and these people sitting here in this class are not that at all. It's almost like I saw them for the first time, stood up and I told them, I said, I'm leaving, I'm not getting a drink, I'm not going to the bathroom, I'm leaving the Mormon church, and I have never been back. 44 years of Mormonism. So I grabbed my purse and I left. And then I walked out the door of that classroom, and there was a little drinking fountain against the wall in the corner right outside the room. And I stood there and I texted Jake and I said, I need you to meet me by the drinking fountain, by the Relief Society room. We need to talk. So a few minutes later, Jake comes out, and this was the conversation that I had with him. I said, if you were going to the Mormon Church today for the first time, if you're church shopping, this is your first date with the religion, would you want a second date? Would you want to come back to this church? And he was like, no, absolutely not. Like, our lesson is hateful. The whole 3 hours has been horrible. No, if you put it like that, no, I wouldn't. And I said, me either. We'll talk about it in the car and let's go get the kids. We're leaving. And I'm leaving the church. And Jake was just like, wait, what? So we go get in the car, and I spent the whole week just really grappling with, do I want to be part of this community that's so hateful? The hatred that I had towards, as a white supremacist, and this is church doctrine, that black skin was a curse from God. My fear and hatred of anyone who had brown skin, whether they were from India, whether they were African-American, whether they were Mexican, it was almost like that week I could just see all of these dots kind of connecting. And I started to get this big picture of what my life was inside of this organization. The next Sunday, we went to a Christian church, and my ex-husband is still part of this Christian church. It was very loving. It's an incredible church. They are very LGBTQ supporting. They have support groups for women who've had abortions. They are kind, amazing people. And that first Sunday that we went to a non-Mormon church, and the pastor was just truly talking about love and support and working communally as humans, it was mind-boggling. And Jake and I both knew in that moment, standing in that church, that we could never go back to the Mormon church. 2 weeks after that walkout, I would resign from the Mormon church, putting a stop with my children to 7 generations that my children are descended from the very foundations of Mormonism on that side of the family, 5 generations on my side, and the buck stopped with me. 2 weeks later, my marriage would end, and my whole entire life would collapse, and I would be left with absolutely nothing. And that shift is a lot of what opened me up to stepping away from the Trump train, the MAGA movement, and ultra-conservative, because my life before was very privileged. I was living in $1 million homes. We were vacationing all the country. I had everything I wanted. I could drop a $100 bill. I wouldn't even take the time to bend over and pick it up. We had so much for so long, and suddenly my life collapsing made me see the other side. I would be sleeping in my car, and then I want to go back just a few seconds. She would see $100 bill. This is figure of speech, but she wouldn't even take the time to pick it up. That's how privileged and in a lot of money she was, finding herself in. She wouldn't even pick it up, guys. Imagine. No longer have that car. I would no longer have anything. I had absolutely nothing. I lost everything in my divorce. And for the first time, I was sitting in the DES office applying for food stamps. If I hadn't had 3 years of absolute struggle, I don't know that it would have been enough to wake me up. And my new friends are Navajo and Japanese and Black. And of course, I live in Arizona, so lots of Mexicans and atheist, Buddhist, Jewish, like everything. My friend group became this beautiful melting pot. So when she says, she has all sorts of friends from all walks of life, but also all sorts of ethnicities, what do you feel about that? Because that's really what we want, just coexist together and be able to learn from each other. So guys, after watching Jenny's interview and her saying all of this, what do you think? Do you feel like you have a better understanding of how tons and millions of people like her operate now? What can we do in order to touch these people? A very important thing that she said, what I take away from all of this, is that these people within that white supremacist Republican MAGA group she was operating in, they search for leadership. They search for a strong leader, someone with an agenda. It does not matter how much scandals they are involved in. They want a leader, someone who comes out, shows them the way, and kind of projects this bigger-than-life persona. And I think that is what we miss when looking at the Democrats. Now, I was wondering lately, people talk about, Cory Booker and whatever, but OC, is she the type of leader as a woman that could take on this bigger than life persona? Or do you feel like we are still waiting for that one in the Democratic Party to stand up? People, Americans, talk to me. Put it in the comments, guys. If you enjoyed that video, happy you hung out with your girl today, let me know. Put it in the comments and I'll see you in the next video. And guys, don't forget to subscribe. Peace.